Welcome to the preview overview of episode 15 with Eddie Arambula. This is an incredible episode. Eddie's journey is very impactful and moving. Following this preview, please watch the 5-minute video that sets the tone for this incredible episode. Thanks for tuning in, and please enjoy the full episode titled The Power of Storytelling.
And I remember walking behind Allison, Cason's widow, and I wanted to tap her, and I wanted to give her a hug. I wanted to say I'm sorry, but at that moment I couldn't get myself to connect with her, right? And that's something that really sat with me for a long time, and that was kind of one of my goals, my personal goals in my healing journey. Was I need to be able to connect and have a conversation. So yeah, about 10 or 15 years later, I got myself all put together, ready to go, and I ended up visiting them in Birmingham, Alabama. I knocked on the door and I said, I'm here, I'm ready. Like in the video I talk about, all I said was what took me so long, right? They had been waiting for me.
Wow.
That's something that I feel a lot of veterans in these situations where, there's Gold Star families involved, right? Your battle buddies were KIA, or that, there's a big fear to make that leap. So all these items that I have, for a long time, they were just in a box. So it's kind of like you come back home and you box up those memories, those experiences, and you just, put them under your bed so that you really don't think about them, right? And for me, I think it was about 10 years before I went to the VA and asked for help, and through this healing process that I began to get my box out and began to live with these memories and these experiences, so that I could hopefully transition from one world to the other. So the first one is the etching of Specialist Ahmed Cason, which is pictures right above, and he was in my platoon, and he was also the gunner in my truck for my first deployment to Baghdad, Iraq, 2004. So Specialist Cason, he was the strongest person in our platoon, both physically and mentally. So somebody that I looked up to, but a lot of people in the platoon did. He was really courageous. When we deployed in late March, he left his wife Allison and his 2 young children, Akila and Gabe, and I think Akila might have been maybe 2, and Gabe, maybe close to a year. So at the time, I was married, but I didn't have any kids. So I think Cason was about 25 years old. So I really thought he was like a grown-up, and I saw myself still kind of as a kid. So I really looked up to him, and he wasn't supposed to be in our truck. He was assigned to another truck, but before we deployed, he reached out to our platoon sergeant, Reginald Butler, and he said he called him like in the middle of the night and told him that, if we deployed, that he wanted to be on our truck, and that was the only way that he would go. So then in April 4, 2004, when the fighting started, he was wounded and later that night passed away. I had an idea when I started my PhD program here at Texas State. I had read a book from Dr. Guajardo, and it talks about like a community learning exchange. So in that book, it talks about us as the community having the stories, having the knowledge, and I thought about Cason's kids, which were now older teenagers at the time, and I realized that they really didn't know who their father was because unfortunately he was killed while they were young. And how could they if we, his battle buddies, held those stories? So I made a plan to reach out to as many Army friends and family as I could, and just collect stories, pictures, quotes, anything that they would want to share. And there I realized how difficult this work can be because some of his best friends had a hard time contributing at the time. And I just couldn't understand why, right? But as the stories came in, as the pictures came in, and I was working on putting the book together, I could feel the pain. I could feel those experiences rushing back. I could feel the emotions. And that's the tough work, right, that we have to do, I believe, to heal. So we put it together, and I always tell people, it took me a year to put this little book together. It's got a couple stories and some pictures, right? It sounds so simple, but it was so challenging, and I think it was, the end product was so powerful. So there's only 3 copies, which, I kept one, and the other 2, I gave one to each of his children. Probably over 10 years where I wanted to reach out to Allison and the kids, but I was afraid, and I had a lot of guilt because he was, killed in our truck protecting us. But through this book, creating this book and getting the stories and my dissertation, I really got the courage to be ready and show up. And I went to visit them in Birmingham, Alabama. And, as I knocked on the door, I felt I was ready, to sit and wait if I needed to. But they opened the door with open arms, and they just told me what took me so long, right, to get there. So I feel like, the picture is like the beginning of this, of part of my journey, and closing the circle and continuing the work.